So it turns out that even in high ranks, I still see so many players building the wrong items on their magic based heroes. So in this guide, I'm going to go through every magic item so you will know how to apply their effects more effectively and hopefully have a better understanding of what to build. Let's start off with the newest magic item in Mobile Legends, Wishing Lantern. With a cost of 2,250 gold, Wishing Lantern's cost is a bit on the high side, but still gives 75 magic power, 400 mana and a nice 10% cooldown reduction. Wishing Lantern's passive triggers whenever you deal 800 base magic damage to an enemy hero. When activated, a purple butterfly will be launched from your hero towards the enemy hero and deal damage according to 8% of the target's current HP. You can see me activating the effect here. It's important to note that the damage dealt by the passive is taking into account the current HP of the enemy hero and not their max HP. Current HP is the remaining amount of HP that the enemy has, while max HP is basically the maximum amount of HP that the enemy has. This means that as you reduce the enemy's HP with your attacks, Wishing Lantern's passive will also deal less damage. However, it has a minimum base damage of 50 once you get the enemy low enough. Specifically, Wishing Lantern starts dealing 50 base damage as long as the enemy's current HP is lower than 625. Now, there are several things to note about this effect which I have tested for. The first thing is that there is a damage window of 1 to 2 seconds to trigger the passive. If you look here, we are able to trigger the effect as long as we don't wait past 2 seconds for each attack. But if we wait more than 2 seconds for each attack, the passive will not trigger. You can, however, extend the damage window by continuously attacking and stacking the damage. As you can see here, we are way past the damage window of 2 seconds, but we can still trigger the effect of the passive. This is probably because there is a hidden damage stack assigned to each enemy hero that you hit, which can be refreshed as long as you hit the same enemy within 2 seconds. The second thing to note is that Wishing Lantern only accounts for base damage and not effective damage. It's easier to show this than to explain it, so let me demonstrate it to you. You can see that with our attacks, we dealt a total of 628 magic damage to the enemy, which is below the 800 damage threshold required to trigger Wishing Lantern's passive, but it was triggered regardless. The reason is that we actually did 1354 base damage, which was reduced by the enemy's magic defense to 628 effective damage. This goes to show that base damage is the one that matters when triggering the passive. The third thing to note is that Wishing Lantern does not account for damage coming from item effects and battle spells. Let me demonstrate it here with Lightning Truncheon. If you look here, I did 755 magic damage with my skill, and 189 magic damage with Lightning Truncheon, which should be enough to trigger Wishing Lantern's passive. But as you can see, it did not trigger. I have tested this as well with other items like Feather of Heaven and Glowing Wand, as well as battle spells like Flame Shot and magic damage from their effects did not help in triggering Wishing Lantern. The fourth and last thing to note is that you can trigger Wishing Lantern's passive multiple times when you deal an excessive amount of burst damage. For example here, we dealt 5,311 magic damage with Veil's ultimate, which when divided by 800 damage gives us 6 triggers. And as you can see, there were 6 butterflies flying out, which indicates that we managed to trigger the passive 6 times in one go. Now, with all the explanations out of the way, Wishing Lantern is generally a good item to use when countering enemies with high HP, since the damage from this item is based on the enemy's current HP. As a result, I tend not to buy it as an early item since enemies will have lower HP when their levels are lower, and they don't have that many items in the early stages of the game. That said, Wishing Lantern will generally be useful on most heroes as long as you're countering high HP enemies since the passive isn't too difficult to trigger. However, it isn't that great when you are against a lineup with low HP, as the passive will be less impactful. The best heroes to use Wishing Lantern on tend to be heroes that have a sustained DPS playstyle instead of burst damage, since you can trigger the passive earlier when their current HP is still high to maximize the effect. Examples of such heroes are Truncheon, Cyclops, and Lilia. Our next item is a big one. Holy Crystal has a base magic power of 185, which is the highest of any item in the game. For comparison, most other tier 3 magic items only have around 70 base magic power. However, it is also the most expensive magic item that costs 3000 gold. This means you will need more time to complete it than any other magic item. Thankfully, Holy Crystal's build path is relatively efficient as both Mystery Codex and Magic Wand are cost efficient tier 1 and tier 2 items, so the high cost isn't too damaging even if you are building Holy Crystal early in the match. On top of the high magic power base stat, Holy Crystal's passive grants even more magic power by increasing your total magic power by 21 to 35%. From the table here, you can see that you'll get 1% more magic power from the passive for each hero level you gain. From my test, the passive will multiply any magic power stat increases. This includes base stats from emblems and emblem talents like Trail and Weapons Master. Items that give extra magic power from their passives like Concentrated Energy and Brute Force Breastplate, and even from stolen magic power you get from Flame Retribution. Over here, we have a hero that has a level 60 Mage Emblem equipped, which gives us 30 magic power. We also have the Trail Talent equipped, adding another 16 magic power. We also get another 8 magic power as we have a skin for the hero. Now, let's buy Holy Crystal, which gives us 185 base magic power. So that adds up to 239 total magic power. Since our hero level is 15, Holy Crystal's passive gives us 35% extra magic power. And so our final total magic power should be 322.65, which is then rounded down to 322. As you can see here, the math checks out. Holy Crystal can be built on any hero that wants to increase their magic damage and has magic power scaling. However, due to the high cost and lack of a utility effect, Holy Crystal is usually reserved as a mid to late game item for most heroes, especially since the passive gets even better at higher levels. Typically, heroes that have great magic power scaling and are focused on dealing damage would want to build it early, such as Joy or Harith. Now, I introduced Holy Crystal first because the next 5 items we are going to talk about have magic power scaling attached to their effects. What I mean is that those items have effects that are boosted when we have higher magic power. And so Holy Crystal can be a solid option to combo with those items as Holy Crystal provides so much magic power. The first one is Blood Wings, which has a base magic power of 90, the second highest in the game, only behind Holy Crystal. It has a cost of 2100 gold, making it highly cost efficient if what you want is magic power. The build path is also cost efficient and similar to Holy Crystal, which makes Blood Wings smooth to build into. The passive of Blood Wings grants you a shield that has a base HP of 800, but will get bigger the more magic power you have. Once you take damage on the shield, no matter how small or big the damage is, a regeneration timer of 20 seconds will begin. You can monitor this timer, which is displayed on your status bar whenever the shield takes damage. Once the timer is complete, the shield will automatically regenerate to its maximum HP. The great thing is that the shield will still regenerate to max HP even if it's not depleted entirely. The timer is also not interrupted by being active in battle, so you don't have to stop fighting halfway just to get your shield back. Additionally, you also gain an extra 30 points of move speed as long as your Bloodwing shield is active. This is a permanent gain until you lose all of your shield. At the moment that your shield is completely depleted, you gain a large move speed boost for 1 second, which can help escape tight situations. But in the duration when you do not have any Bloodwing shield, you will also lose the extra move speed. So while it may seem like a complete replacement for your standard boots, which gives 40 points of move speed, the caveat is that you're going to lose the move speed when you lose your shield. From my testing, the shield from Bloodwings can be improved from Oracle's passive and healing effect stats from Flask of the Oasis and support emblem stats. However, do note that Oracle is a particularly niche item that isn't great for many mages, and Flask or support emblem are also niche for support heroes that typically do not build Bloodwings. The most obvious exception is Matilda, who could possibly work well with everything that was mentioned. Bloodwings in general is a solid item to have on almost any magic hero, given that most will appreciate the move speed and magic power gains, as well as the extra survivability you get from the shield. The most obvious heroes who can use Bloodwings very well are those that benefit from the extra move speed like Novaria or Chang'e, who can utilize the shield mechanic for extra protection. Speaking of Chang'e, her shield mechanic is pretty interesting, since Chang'e can generate her own shield from skill 2 to enhance her attacks. The game does separate the different shields, although it's not visually obvious if you look at the shield HP. You can however tell whether your attacks are enhanced by looking at the swirling lights around Chang'e. The key here is to understand that whichever shield is generated first will be the first to take damage. You can see here that although we still have shield HP left over, we have already lost our enhanced attack, as indicated by us losing the swirling lights around Chang'e. This means that ideally, you want to recast your skill 2 once your Bloodwing shield is generated, so that your skill 2 shield will be placed behind the Bloodwing shield. The next item we are going to discuss is Lightning Truncheon. It has a base magic power of 75 and also gives 400 mana as well as 10% cooldown reduction. It has a cost of 2250 gold, which makes it one of the more costly magic items. The passive on Lightning Truncheon has two effects and is activated by casting a skill on an enemy. It can be activated on any kind of enemy, including creeps and minions. When the passive is activated, Lightning Truncheon deals magic damage to the enemy hit by the skill, and also change the damage on up to 2 nearby enemies in a relatively small AoE. You can see from the demo here that the AoE is not that big, as the lightning chain reaction is unable to reach enemies that are a bit too far from the original target hit. So that is the first effect. The second effect increases your move speed by 30% for 2 seconds, which is helpful for repositioning. The damage from the first effect has no base damage and is entirely based on your magic power. But since Lightning Truncheon has 75 magic power and the effect has a 120% magic power multiplier, you will start with 90 base damage on Lightning Truncheon. This is actually quite low, so I would not recommend building Lightning Truncheon as a standalone first item on almost every hero. It is much better to build it after at least 2 other magic items, so you can build up some magic power first. An important thing to note is that the passive has a cooldown of 6 seconds, so it functions more as an additional burst damage in between fights. The good thing, however, is that the cooldown is not interrupted even when you're actively fighting, so you don't have to worry about it too much. This is more relevant for older players, as the old Lightning Truncheon passive cooldown will be reset if you deal or take damage, forcing you to leave a fight to complete the cooldown. You can also monitor when the passive is active when the indicator appears on the status bar. Generally, I find Lightning Truncheon best used on heroes that want extra burst damage to add to their combos, such as Eudora and Kadita. But it can also be good for heroes who have good range to add to their poke damage, like Fasa and Xavier. Our next item is Feather of Heaven, which is more of a niche item. With a cost of 2030 gold and having only 55 magic power, Feather is below average in terms of providing magic power. However, it also provides 20% attack speed, 10% lifesteal, and 5% cooldown reduction, as well as 2 passives which benefit basic attackers to make up for it. The first passive deals extra magic damage to enemies for every basic attack that you deal, with a base damage of 50 plus 30% of your total magic power. So as you can see here, our basic attack dealt damage, but the passive of Feather also added some magic damage along with it. The second passive increases your attack speed by 6% every time you land a basic attack, and can stack up to 5 times. This means that your attacks get even faster as you hit the enemies, and you can gain up to 30% attack speed from this passive. You can see here that our basic attacks got slightly faster over time. You can also monitor the stacks of this passive on the status bar here. However, since most magic heroes rely on their skills to do damage rather than basic attacks, the below average magic power stats, other niche stats and passives are not good enough to be built on them. That said, Feather of Heaven is still a nice item to be built on heroes like Sylvana and Chang'e, who can use the mechanics of this item more effectively. Our last item that also has magic power scaling is Starlium Scythe. It has 70 base magic power but also gives us 10% cooldown reduction, 8% hybrid lifesteal, and 6 points of mana regen. But similar to Lightning Truncheon, is also one of the pricier items, coming in at 2220 gold. Its unique passive has a very specific trigger that makes it a very niche item that should only be built on heroes that have skills with low cooldown. So, to trigger the passive, you have to first cast a skill and then land a basic attack on the target within 3 seconds after casting the skill. The target that was basic attacked will be dealt additional true damage of 100 plus 100% of your total magic power from Starlium Scythe's passive. From my tests, the effect will only be triggered on a single target, even if your basic attack can hit multiple targets. There is a short 1.5 seconds cooldown on the passive after the trigger, so you can't just spam the passive, but it's short enough to be triggered multiple times during combos. You also get a short 10% move speed boost after triggering it, which isn't much to shout about. Most mages will not find this item very useful since they will not be weaving basic attacks in between their skills due to the long animation and relatively low damage of their basic attacks. However, heroes like Karina and Joy will find Starlium Scythe a pretty strong item as they can appreciate the 10% cooldown reduction and are also able to trigger the passive multiple times thanks to their multi-hit combos and quick basic attack animations. Now, after talking about the items with magic power scaling, here is an item that can also give us more magic power, coming in with a cost of 2020 gold and giving us a decent 70 magic power and 400 HP, Concentrated Energy is not too bad in terms of base stats. Concentrated Energy's first passive is a unique attribute that gives us 20% Hybrid Lifesteal. Now, there's a common misconception that Hybrid Lifesteal does not provide any healing from skills. So let me just give a brief explanation on this. The stats that heal from attacks are Lifesteal and Spell Vamp. Lifesteal heals you from your basic attacks damage, while Spell Vamp heals you from your skills damage. Hybrid Lifesteal basically combines both Lifesteal and Spell Vamp into a single stat. So, for Concentrated Energy, you gain 20% Lifesteal and Spell Vamp from the passive. This means you can heal from both your basic attacks and skill damage. The second passive grants you 5 extra magic power when dealing magic damage, which can stack up to 6 times, giving you a maximum of 30 extra magic power. You can track the number of stacks from the indicator on your status bar if you want to. However, you should note that there is an internal cooldown of 0.4 seconds per stack, meaning attacks that deal multiple hits of magic damage will not give you max stacks of this passive immediately. It will still take continuous hits to get max stacks. Also, at max stacks, any magic damage you do will increase by 12% for 5 seconds. From my test, item effects that deal magic damage such as Glowing Wand and battle spells like Petrify will not be able to activate the second passive and help to gain or maintain stacks. The only exception to this is Feather of Heaven, which somehow is still able to activate Concentrated Energy. However, the magic damage dealt from these item effects and spells can still benefit from the 12% magic damage increase when Concentrated Energy is at max stacks. Concentrated Energy in general is still mostly a niche item that is not used by most mages despite the above average magic power it offers, with 100 magic power at max stacks. Most mages are unable to take full advantage of the Hybrid Lifesteal stat it offers due to low spell vamp ratios on their skills, or being unsuitable for a sustained kind of playstyle. That said, heroes like Cyclops and Karina who have solid spell vamp ratios will find Concentrated Energy to be a solid item to buy. Now, let's talk about the two penetration items that are quite similar but also very different. Genius Wand costs exactly 2000 gold and offers 75 magic power and 5% move speed. It also offers a unique attribute which gives us 10 magic penetration, which is really strong during the early stages of the game when magic defenses are low. Additionally, its unique passive applies magic defense reduction on any enemy that we deal magic damage to. Now, magic penetration and magic defense reduction are two different attributes that are applied differently, although their effects may seem similar. Magic penetration can be considered like a buff on your own hero, while magic defense reduction should be considered as a debuff on the enemy hero. This is important as magic penetration only increases the damage that you deal, while magic defense reduction directly lowers the enemy's magic defense and will increase the damage dealt from you and also your teammates. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail here, so if you're interested to understand more about this, I suggest that you check out my other video where I explain how damage calculations work in Mobile Legends, which I have linked in the pinned comment as well as in the description of this video. From my test, I can confirm that Genius Wand's passive can be triggered from damage sources coming from items such as Glowing Wand and battle spells like Flame Shot and Petrify, as well as damage from talents like Impure Rage. It's especially good with Glowing Wand since the burn damage from the item helps to keep the magic defense reduction debuff from Genius Wand going on the enemy hero longer. Genius Wand in general is a great early to mid game item to abuse its mechanics, since enemy magic defense is still low. In the late game, I will keep this item on me if I notice enemies are not building magic defense, as it can still be very effective when they don't. However, I tend to switch it out for Divine Glaive if 1 or 2 enemies have built magic defense, as the penetration from Genius Wand would be insufficient. There are also certain heroes which already have magic penetration or defense reduction in their kits that can combo with Genius Wand to great effect. Examples of such heroes are Harley, Eudora, and Sylvana. The next magic penetration item is Divine Glaive, which has a cost of 1970 gold, but only has 60 magic power. This means that it's not exactly cost efficient, but it more than makes up for it through its two passives. The first passive straight up gives us 40% magic penetration as a unique attribute, and this alone is huge, literally negating 40% of any magic defense stats the enemy builds. The second passive adds on to that, by giving you even more magic penetration for every point of magic defense the enemy has. Here is a rough table of how much percentage magic penetration you get depending on the enemy defense levels. Now, these numbers don't really mean anything if you don't understand what's going on, so I suggest again taking a look at the video that I've linked if you want to understand more about them. But if you don't want to do that, then you just need to know that Divine Glaive is an extremely effective item to counter magic defenses. It's already competitive with other items from around 60 magic defense, but will be especially effective after about 80 magic defense. This is of course generalizing things, and varies from hero to hero. so I would still suggest you go to practice mode and test it out with your own heroes to find the best time to build it. I would consider Divine Glaive as probably the most generalistic item amongst the magic items, and should almost always be built on every game with almost every magic hero. However, in the case when the enemy makes the error of not building any magic defenses, it's not wrong to build Genius Wand instead of Divine Glaive, as Genius Wand offers more magic power and maybe even more penetration in those cases. Moving on from the magic penetration items, we have pretty much a staple item that should be built on most heroes, especially if you are playing in the mid lane. With a cost of 2150 gold, Glowing Wand offers a solid 75 magic power as well as 400 HP and 5% move speed. On top of its decent stat line, Glowing Wand combines two great passives that makes it a really strong item on almost any magic hero. The first passive inflicts a 3-second burn effect on an enemy whenever you deal magic damage on them. Each second of the burn effect deals magic damage equal to 1% of their max HP, meaning that it's especially effective against high HP targets. A common misconception on Glowing Wand is that only magic damage from skills can trigger this effect, which is not the case, since basic attacks that deal magic damage, such as from Harley and Kimi, can also trigger it. The confusion comes from the older version of Glowing Wand that used to only trigger on skill damage. Another thing to note from my testing is that magic damage coming from item effects, battle spells, and talents such as Lightning Truncheon, Flame Shot, or Impel Rage were not able to trigger the first passive. This means that you are reliant on your own hero's attacks to trigger the burn effect. The second passive triggers an anti-healing effect that reduces the enemy's incoming healing or shielding effectiveness by half for 3 seconds whenever you deal damage to an enemy. You can see if the enemy is affected by this passive if a broken heart indicator appears on the enemy. From my testing, damage from battle spells also did not trigger the second passive. Item effects and talents were not tested since they already required dealing damage to activate them, so it was redundant. Along with the aforementioned Divine Glaive, Glowing Wand is also one of the most generalistic items to build, since it has a good stat line as well as two great passives. The second passive is especially useful as it's quite common for most enemy lineups to feature at least one hero that has sustained mechanics. I tend to build Glowing Wand in 99% of my games, especially when playing a magic damage mid laner, regardless of which hero I'm playing. Our next item is also another one, but is a much more niche item. Coming with a cost of 2040 gold, Ice Queen Wand provides us with a solid 75 magic power, 10% spell vamp, 300 HP and 7% move speed. This makes its stat line really solid for the cost. However, the passive is quite situational. You can trigger the passive by dealing skill damage on an enemy, which then applies a 10% slow effect on them for 2 seconds, which can stack up to 3 times for a 30% slow. There is a 1 second cooldown in between triggers, so it still takes 3 seconds to stack up to the maximum slow. This means that it's more beneficial to use Ice Queen Wand on heroes with a continuous skill damage kit, such as Lilia or Eve, as they have the potential to maximize the effect. The slow effect can be very useful to keep enemies in range or keep them away from you when playing heroes with a continuous damage playstyle. The solid stats offered by Ice Queen Wand make it really great on these types of heroes, and therefore it's an item I highly recommend when playing them. Meanwhile, it's not so great on heroes that deliver quick burst combos like Eudora, since they are not able to maximize the slow effect by applying continuous skill damage. Next, we have an item that most players would just affectionately call it the Book. With a low cost of just 1870 gold, Enchanted Talisman provides only 50 magic power, but also gives 250 HP and an impressive 20% cooldown reduction. This stat line means that it should be used on heroes that really need the cooldown reduction instead of pure magic power. The second passive further adds to this theme by allowing you to break the game's cooldown reduction limit of 40% by an extra 5%. This means that you can have a maximum of 45% cooldown reduction by buying Enchanted Talisman. The first passive is also quite simple. It regenerates your hero's mana by 1.5% every second, meaning you would fully regenerate your mana from 0 to 100% in about a minute. Generally speaking, you would rarely run out of mana as long as you have the book equipped. Both these passives seems great and will generally benefit almost any hero in the game, since who wouldn't like faster cooldowns? But the low magic power stat is a cause for concern that hinders Enchanted Talisman's general usage. This is why I would only recommend the book on skill spamming heroes that really need the mana regeneration and cooldown reduction, such as Cyclops and Savior. Our next item comes with a cost of 2030 gold and only offers 45 magic power, the lowest on the list so far. Clock of Destiny also gives us 400 HP and mana, as well as 10% cooldown reduction. The utility stat line of this item points to Clock of Destiny being more of a niche utility item. Along with the utility stats, Clock also provides us with two utility-based passives. The first passive is triggered when dealing magic damage to enemies. It provides us with up to 12 hybrid defense per stack for up to 6 stacks, giving us a maximum of 72 hybrid defense at full stacks and at max hero level. Hybrid defense basically means both physical and magic defense, and 72 hybrid defense stats is actually an enormous amount of stats. For comparison, Oracle, which also provides hybrid defense, only gives 40 hybrid defense. One thing to note is that this passive also has a similar internal cooldown mechanic as concentrated energy, and therefore has a 0.4 seconds time gap to trigger each stack. This is why the item is more suitable for heroes with a continuous damage kit such as Hylos and Truncheon. The second passive is triggered whenever your current HP or mana drops below 50%. It will restore either stat by 15% over 3 seconds, which really isn't that much but still helpful in a pinch. The restoration will not be interrupted when you are attacked, so you don't really have to worry about it being triggered in the middle of combat. The HP and mana triggers are also separate, so the passive will restore them separately. Despite the general utility of Clock, the effects are not easily maximized due to the delay in gaining the maximum effect of the first passive. The most common heroes that you will find building this item are Truncheon and Hylos, as they are able to continuously trigger the passive and find the additional mana stats useful thanks to their kit. Most other magic heroes would prefer going for more magic power or straight up having non-conditional defensive equipment, which is a nice segue into our next item. Winter Crown is not really a magic item, as instead of magic power, it provides adaptive attack instead. Adaptive attack is a stat that changes into either magic power or physical attack depending on which stat you have more of. You don't really have to worry about this too much as long as you are building your heroes correctly. Winter Crown costs us 1910 gold and gives only 45 adaptive attack, which is low given the cost. Additionally, it also gives us 400 HP and 5% cooldown reduction, which isn't much. However, the main draw of this item is not its stat line, but the active skill. When you buy Winter Crown, you'll gain an ability called Frozen, which you can activate at any time you tap it. When activated, your hero immediately becomes frozen in place, causing you to become untargetable and immune to all CC effects as well as damage for 2 whole seconds. During this time, you will not be able to move, basic attack, or cast any skills. However, if you casted a skill before activating Winter Crown, the skill will still be completed. Certain heroes can abuse this to channel their skills while being immune to cancellation or damage. Obvious candidates are Odette with her powerful ultimate as well as Joy and Alice. However, Winter Crown is not as niche as some of the other items in the list, since the Frozen ability can come in handy to create outplay situations, casting it to become immune or cancel certain skills, such as using it during Yin's ultimate. It's overall a solid item to buy if you know what you're doing with it, as a well-timed Winter Crown can be a total game changer when you dodge key abilities. Our next item also features the adaptive attack mechanic, and it's Fleeting Time. It costs 2050 gold and only has a very low 30 adaptive attack, making it the tier 3 item that provides the least magic power. Additionally, it also provides us with 600 HP and 15% cooldown reduction, which is nothing crazy. The passive of Fleeting Time is triggered every time you score a hero kill or assist. When triggered, it lowers the active cooldown of your ultimate by 30%. Technically speaking, this can be very useful if your hero has a very powerful ultimate with a very long cooldown. However, most heroes will generally find the low adaptive attack stat a massive hindrance, despite being able to reduce the ultimate cooldown significantly. Furthermore, most fights can usually be ended with a single game-changing ultimate, which means that as long as you're using your ultimate correctly, there's no real need to reduce its cooldown. That said, certain heroes will still find usage out of Fleeting Time, such as Atlas and Kaja, who have extremely impactful ultimates that have really long cooldowns. Our next item has the lowest cost out of all tier 3 items, coming in at only 1500 gold. Skypiercer's stat line is actually pretty good for its cost, offering 60 adaptive attack and 15 movement speed. As a comparison, Tier 1 Boots itself has 20 movement speed. However, the real deal for this item is actually its passive. Skypiercer will immediately execute any enemy if you deal damage to them while they are under critical HP. What constitutes critical HP depends on how many stacks you have on the item. It starts off at 4% of the enemy HP when you first buy the item and have 0 stacks. For every kill on an enemy hero, you gain 10 stacks, of which each stack increases this threshold by 0.1%, up to a maximum of 80 stacks, which increases the threshold to a maximum of 12% HP. The kicker here is that you will also lose 30% of your current stacks whenever you die, thereby dropping the threshold of the passive trigger. This means that if you want to maximize the effects of Skypiercer, you need to ensure that you are doing most of the killing while also dying as little as possible. From my test, Skypiercer was not activated by damage from item effects and battle spells such as Lightning Truncheon and Petrify. In general, Skypiercer is more useful when facing tanky enemies with high HP, since the execute effect deals true damage and ignores defenses. You'd also want to build it only when you're confident in snowballing and not dying as much, as you're basically paying an opportunity cost for buying Skypiercer instead of items with more useful effects, such as Glowing Wand. Personally, I rarely build Skypiercer as I'm mostly playing in solo queue and cannot guarantee that my team will funnel the kills to me. For the last magic item on the list, we have Flask of the Oasis, costing 1850 gold. The stat line for its cost is actually pretty solid, with 60 magic power, 300 HP and 10% cooldown reduction. However, the two passives are designed mostly for heroes that provide support instead of damage, which is very different from the rest of the items on the list. The first passive is a unique attribute that basically buffs all healing effects including shielding by an additional 12%. This includes heals and shields that are casted on yourself, such as the passive on Uranus. The second passive is triggered whenever a heal or shield is casted on an ally hero, which applies a buff on them that lasts for 3 seconds. If that ally's HP falls below 35% during those 3 seconds, they will immediately gain a shield that lasts for 3 seconds. The shield's HP is based on your ally's hero level, and not on your own hero level. At level 15, they can gain a massive 1500 HP shield from this passive. Additionally, the ally hero who manages to trigger this shield also has all of their skill cooldowns reduced by 2 seconds. However, do note that the effect has a cooldown of 60 seconds on each individual hero when they trigger it, meaning that this effect is not spammable on the same allied hero. From my testing, the Revitalized Battle Spell was able to trigger the second passive, which is good if you're playing a hero that doesn't have easy access to healing or shielding, such as Digi. Generally, you wouldn't want to build Flask on most damage-based heroes as you're not likely to use either of those passives. Therefore, it is best used on support healing heroes like Angela, Florine, or Matilda. And that's all of the magic items we have in Mobile Legends. If you enjoyed this guide and found it useful, feel free to hit the like button to help me get this seen by more players like yourself. If you'd like to discuss hero builds, I'd also suggest that you join my Discord server, which I have also linked in the pinned comment and the description of this video. With that said, I appreciate that you watched this video up to this point, and I'll catch you again in the next one.